This program contains descriptions of violence, drug use, and sexual assault. Previously on True Texas Crime.
The fact that he got out long before his sentence was up in a murder case of a 16-year-old girl, a brutal, premeditated, pre-planned, torturous murder, and he gets out early. It shocks me. I mean, it really does. It should shock the conscience of everyone listening to your podcast, Julie. And for me, that's what I call a pine box sentence. They ought to get out of prison in a pine box.
This is True Texas Crime, the significant life of Angela Stevens. Episode 9, Why This Story? Why Now? Producer Kari, so glad you're here for today's episode.
Yes.
Before we jump into what we're going to talk about today, why don't we just give the audience an update, follow up to our last episode when I spoke to Francie Hakes, the former federal prosecutor, about Lee's latest sentencing from the federal court in Mississippi.
Yes, that sounds like a good plan.
Great. Okay, so the family, Angela's family, received an email saying that there was an arrest warrant in the state of Texas for Lee, which by all accounts seems like great news, which means that when his sentence is finished in federal prison, that he will immediately be transferred to Texas prison, hopefully, as Francie was explaining, should happen. So they received an email saying this about the warrant, but we are having the family to try and contact the Texas Board of Pardons and Paroles to verify this information for us and make sure it wasn't just some type of form email. So Amy was able to reach them, but she kind of got incomplete, inconsistent information, cousin Amy. So we're going to continue to try to get some more specific information about how much time is exactly left on Lee's sentence. We think it's still more than 30 years. And when and who we need to start advocating to make sure that he does go back to prison and get, as Francie said, a pine box sentence in the state of Texas once these federal charges time is served.
Yes. Yes, I think that's a good plan of action to kind of keep everyone in the loop and do our part to make sure that things happen.
Yeah, and we will keep our audience posted, and I let the family know that no matter how long it takes, we're gonna stay in communication about it. So we'll keep communicating with you too.
Yes.
Today was just a bit of a behind-the-scenes episode that you and I have talked about a lot over the course of the last several months that we wanted to do as kind of our own wrap-up, separate from the wrap-up with the family. For you and I, why this story and why now? And I've talked a lot throughout the podcast about why I wanted to tell this story and why I wanted to tell it now. So I just want to start off today by opening up and letting you have that opportunity to share more. I know you shared some in our epilogue episode, but just talk to us some more about it.
Yes, thank you so much. You did a really great job in the episodes letting everyone know kind of where you were and why this was an important story. And I did touch a little bit on it in epilogue, episode 7. And I would say that, I mentioned Holly, of course, my sister being friends with Angie, and then my own, what I kind of went through. I was 13 years old at the time. And I kind of felt for the first time in my life that wasn't a safe place. I always remember just being safe. And then when this event happened, I just remember thinking it wasn't safe. And so that was a pivotal point for me in my life. And then, of course, having 2 daughters. So my oldest, when we first started talking about this, I mentioned she turned 16. And now I have my youngest daughter just turned 16 last month. That was pretty pivotal in why this was an important story. But most of all, too, I believe it was really thinking about the way we look at victims in general, people who have been harmed, people who are abused, manipulated, what have you, end up in certain predicaments. And we just don't talk about it a lot. As a society, we kind of push stuff down. I feel like we do that. So in doing this, I kind of thought we got to figure out how to change the narrative of these stories. We've got to figure out what we can do differently. And when you think about the things that happened to Angie, for example, I didn't know that Lee tried to run her over with a truck. That was mentioned. Her sisters both advised that she had told them, she had at least told Kimberly that she was scared of Lee.
Yeah.
And so I think that was one thing that she didn't probably tell a lot of people because she didn't know what to do with that information. And at the same time, this was a boy she thought she was in love with. So,
and Kimberly probably didn't know what to do with that information either.
100%. She was probably just as confused as to what's going on. This person seems nice. He eats dinner with our family.
Yeah.
What have you. And I think that just with my history of friends who've been in certain predicaments, I've been very blessed that I haven't been in situations like that. Definitely been manipulated at times, but not in a physical abusive relationship or anything where I felt fear like she must have felt. And I feel that when these things happen, if you have a friend that is being physically abused and they go back to the person over and over, we always question, why is the victim going back? Why would she go back to that situation? And I'm very well aware that this happens both with men and women. But in our example, with what we're talking about, it's with Angela's story, with Angie's story. So I'm using that to say that we look at most recently with what's happened with P. Diddy.
Yeah.
And the first thing people want to say is, why did they take so long to come forward about this assault? We are always asking why the victim is behaving in a way that they're behaving. And my hope is that with just little by little, we can change the narrative to say, to your first response not being, why did she stay, but why did he behave in the manner that he behaved? Why does this individual feel like he can abuse another individual? What is going wrong with their life that they think that it's okay to perpetuate this type of behavior? I'm hoping that we can change those narratives, because the reason why these women don't come forward is they know that the general public is going to ask them why it took so long for them to come forward. And it adds another layer of, it's just better to not say anything at all, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I was reading some stuff about the P. Diddy case this weekend, and there were comments on some of the articles I was reading on social media that were saying things like, why did these women wait so long to come forward? And I don't even know what to do with that statement anymore.
Correct. I don't know why we look at it and why we, again, a victim who's been through so much, why are we going back to the victim and then just placing shame upon them again for coming forward? And why aren't we talking about getting this person help? I think it's interesting that I'm sure there were other people who might have known about what Lee said, trying to attempt to run over Angie with the truck. I'm sure that when he told multiple people in the trial, when he said, she's a narc, I want to kill her. I mean, that was stated several times throughout the trial. No one ever thought that that's kind of odd to say something so violent about, over and over again.
Well, sure. And we can go back to my classmate, Tina, and her story, and talking about her husband, who was her boyfriend during high school. He was abusing her, and I didn't know about it, but apparently everyone else did that was close to them, and no one was doing anything to really try and help her either. I'm not blaming them. I'm just saying, I think we all need to ask ourselves, what can we do to try to make the situation better? Whether that's in your community, find out about how to educate people about mental health resources, no matter what their income level may be, or training for how people can talk about things they're uncomfortable talking about, or just getting people to ask questions. I don't know what it is, but we can make a difference if we all commit to doing something. There's nothing too small that can help build us towards this change that we need.
Correct. And that was really after, knowing the whole story, that was what kind of prompted me to say, yes, this story was about the terrible, terrible murder of Angie. But also there was a deeper there's some underlying tones in there that we need to address. And my kids have friends and their boyfriends, in the past, I've heard that they're abusive. There's women my age. I have friends that are in abusive situations and they don't really know how to get out. And a lot of it is, like I said, it's shame. And I think it was Brene Brown said that shame is the most powerful master emotion. It's the fear that we're not good enough. And I think if they're not afraid to come forward, or if they feel comfortable coming forward, if they can finally stand up for themselves, then there can be just small changes within that could have maybe changed the trajectory of the story. For future stories. Again, this story happened in 1988, but the story still happens in 2024.
I think it sounds so simple to say, but if you see something, say something. And if something's happening to you, just please, please, please try to find the strength to share it with someone. And if you share it with someone who dismisses it, find someone else.
Yes, I agree. So that was really, aside from this just being a story about learning and growing up kind of fast. I think we all grew up that summer. You learned that the world wasn't, baseball, cotton candy, and fall carnivals and the skating rink and football games. And up to that point, that's what it had been. That's why I wanted to be involved and felt like it was an important story to tell. And I appreciate you asking me. Let's talk about some specific episodes that maybe was your favorite.
Before we jump into that, let's talk a little bit about one episode that didn't happen that we wanted to happen, because I think it's a topic that you wanted to bring up. We really wanted to have an episode titled The Kindness of Bill Chandler, because we believe that the Chandler family was also a victim of Lee and his manipulation. I totally respect that they did not want to participate. I 100% get that. But I just want to make it clear that, we've always taken a stance that they were a victim too. So why don't you talk about that for a bit?
Yeah, they were mentioned so much within the trial, how Angie met Lee, because the Chandlers were neighbors with the Stevens family. And I know that the Stevens family endears the Chandlers as well. The Chandler family actually took Lee in and wanted to let him finish school in Princeton, and he manipulated them as well. A lot of people kept saying throughout the story when all this happened, I can't believe, I would never imagine that these boys would do something like this. I can't believe it. But after hearing the full story, this is what he did. He did whatever he needed to do or be whoever he needed to be to get whatever need he needed filled, even at a young age. And I believe it was Investigator Dennison that even said himself that he felt like Lee was kind of a leader that could kind of coerce people into doing things or believing what he needed them to believe. They were a great family. And it's unfortunate that this happened while he was living with them. I think they were just as shocked and appalled as anyone.
One of the things I've learned over the course of the podcast is that, based on the facts that we've studied, is that this wasn't just someone who kind of had a bad night. This is someone who was a lifelong manipulator, even at a young age, and is continuing to manipulate our justice system, as was pointed out in the last episode by Francie Hakes.
Absolutely. Still doing the things that he should not be doing and just kind of thumbing his nose to rules.
Let's talk about what was the most challenging episode for you as the executive producer who kind of would listen to everything and give the final sign-off for me.
The most challenging episode for me was episode 3. Of course, episode 3 is where you bravely tell your story about being assaulted in high school. And in that episode as well, my sister was interviewed and you did the interviews mostly. And so how this podcast would happen is if I could be involved with the interview, I would. And if I couldn't, you did it. And then I would listen to it when I could. And I remember after this episode, you were like, did you listen? And I was thinking, yeah, I'm going to get to it. And then I realized why you were asking me, because it was kind of like, oh, wow, I did not realize to the extent what had happened to my sister. And so it was very personal for me because I'm always going to be protective of the people I love. And I love you dearly. And of course, I love my sister dearly. So once you edited it, I just remember getting panicky right before we were supposed to post it. And thinking, oh no, what are we going to do? What if people say that they don't believe you? Because I'm thinking I can't contain myself on social media, which we have now. And there's no telling what I'll do if someone tries to, make you feel bad or make her feel some sort of way. And I thought maybe we need to leave some details out. And you were at Comic-Con, I believe.
I was at Comic-Con in San Diego, which is a big convention where all of kind of geeks of all kinds get together, and I was very stressed out. I was like, what am I going to do? And I played the episode for my friend I was with, and she's like, well, it is graphic, but it needs to be graphic. And I remember one kind of specific sticking point is when I, in the episode, I talk in graphic detail about my body reacting positively during the assault. And I remember you saying, why does anyone need to know that? And I said, because a former U.S. congressman said that your body shuts down if it's rape, that it wouldn't have a reaction or it's not a legitimate rape. And you were like, well, I don't know anything about that. And I remember I was like, well, you need to listen and think about it. And then as soon as we hung up the phone, I sent you the link to that article. I don't know, it was a tough moment because I do get like very heated. And I mean, I realize it was more about you're trying to protect us than trying to protect our listeners.
Correct. And then also, it was a very poignant moment when in that episode you tell my sister, and it's like she doesn't even realize it too, that you say you were brutally raped. And there's a difference. It's still the same hurt. It's still the same everything. I'm just saying, but some people...
Yeah, but it's very different.
It's different.
Yeah.
Some people...
I was assaulted and she was violently raped. And I don't think that she really knew that until we recorded that episode. And I certainly didn't know that about her at all until we recorded that episode.
And I didn't either. So I thought about it and I thought, there's been things in the past with people in college, friends who didn't report things because they feel like, well, no one's going to do anything. I wasn't raped. Again, we go back to why this podcast and why now. We didn't know it was going to take this turn. We didn't know in episode 3 the turn was coming here. None of us knew. I feel like there was a reason it took the turn it took. I'm incredibly proud of you and Holly for putting yourselves out there and speaking your truth after all these years. And letting others know that, hey, this is not right. You should report it. That was tough for me just because it was emotionally tough for me. I wonder, I think when this happened to her, I would have been 15 maybe, but I don't know that I would have been a big help. But I felt so sorry for you guys in that moment that I couldn't go back in time and be there for both of you. So I think that was also selfishly, it was a me thing. And I'm super thankful that you sent me the article and we talked about, well, I know it may be graphic, but guess what? This is a graphic situation. This is a tough conversation.
Yeah, people don't want to have tough conversations about things that happen in the world, but especially things that happen to women in our bodies. They don't. Everyone wants to be an expert about women's bodies.
Yes. Yeah. So anyways, that was my probably toughest episode. And at the same time, now looking back, one of the most poignant episodes of the podcast. What do you think was your favorite?
They're like children at this point. I have a special relationship with each of them. But the episode where we had all the different people from Princeton.
Right. You're talking about episode 4?
Yeah, episode 4. Princeton, Texas, the town, the people, the murder. It's really a great, great episode, and I love it, and I love how we got so many different perspectives from the Pendleton family, from Mauricio, from Janice Bohannon, from Tina. It was really, really great, and I got amazing feedback from the listeners of the podcast from that. It was great to reconnect with some of those folks that I hadn't talked to in so long. Well, I know I get a lot of people asking me, where do we go from here with the podcast? I know you probably do too.
Yes.
I think many people want to know if we're going to try to interview Lee. It was brought up in episode 7. And I'll just say, that's a continuing conversation we're having. And we'll certainly keep everyone posted on that. But I think the most important thing that we want to keep doing is that we're going to continue to try and give a voice to forgotten victims through more true Texas crime stories.
Absolutely. I think that there's a lot of voices out there that never were heard. It gives a voice to the voiceless, and it makes a difference maybe to the families who felt forgotten, or to just the victims who aren't here to speak for themselves. So yes, I would love to continue to do this somehow. I hope we get to do that.
I do want to just thank a couple of people that we didn't get a chance to mention throughout the podcast. One person I neglected to include in the credits of episode 4 was Wes Schweitzer, who helped record the interview with the Pendleton family. So thank you, Wes. And Johnny Morrison, who is a friend of both of ours. I've went to school with Johnny since kindergarten, I believe. And he was such a huge friend to the podcast and just friend to us. But he helped us contacting Larry Dennison, which I think was just a huge catalyst for the podcast. So we love you, Johnny.
We do. He was amazing.
He's like a historian of Princeton.
He has information, so much information on that town. And he's just a great dude. So yes, that was pivotal in kicking this podcast off. So very thankful for him and for everyone who participated and was a part of it. And the people who keep listening and sharing our podcast. I think it just gets to more people and makes a bigger impact.
Thank you all for supporting us, and stay tuned. We're definitely going to keep you posted when we get more specifics about this Texas warrant on Lee and how we can continue to be an advocate for Angela. Please like and follow True Texas Crime, The Significant Life of Angela Stevens, wherever you get your podcasts, so you can stay tuned for any future updates. True Texas Crime, The Significant Life of Angela Stevens is a North End Burgers production. Recorded, hosted, and written by me, Julie Dove. Kari Southard Hargrave is the executive producer. Studio recording by Matt Gergel, Real Voice LA. Sound design and mixing by Real Voice LA. Opening music, The Colonel, courtesy of Zachariah Hickman. Closing music, Night in the Prairie, courtesy of Derek and Brandon Feicher. Special thanks to Jackie Stevens Tower and Amy Harper Fritz. The views expressed by this podcast host and participants are solely that of the person speaking and do not necessarily reflect the views of any employer, company, institution, or other associated parties.